Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am Steve Goldberg, co-chair with Linda Selman of the Theater Committee here at the National Arts Club. This evening, we're proud to present a stage reading of Nowhere Man, written by Steven Otfinoski, directed by Mark Graham, and featuring a cast including Chris Chinn, Sam Mink, Wesley Han, Sehee Lee, and Alexander Kulcsar. Mr. Otfinoski has written over 50 stage plays, which have been produced off-Broadway and in regional theaters around the country. Seasoned off-Broadway and regional theater director Mark Graham has directed over 100 plays. This is the third collaboration between Otfinoski and Graham here at the National Arts Club. Previously, they successfully presented Mortal Friends about the relationship between iconic writers Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville, and Danse Macabre, centering on the relationship between Soviet filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein and Russian tyrant Joseph Stalin. This evening's performance centers on the life of half-white, half-Asian, Japanese-American sculptor Isamu Noguchi, just after Pearl Harbor was bombed. Themes of racism, fear, injustice, and the place of the artist are explored, revealing their relevance today as they were certainly 80 years ago. For those of you who are not familiar with the National Arts Club, we are a 501c3 nonprofit based in New York City with a mission to stimulate, foster, and promote public interest in the arts. Annually, the club offers more than 150 free programs to the public, including exhibitions, theatrical and musical performances, lectures, and readings. For more information about the National Arts Club, you can visit us at nationalartsclub.org or find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. If you are interested in becoming a member of the National Arts Club or would like more information, please email us at admissions@thenationalartsclub.org. Following the performance, there will be a Q&A session. Please feel free to write down your questions in the chat box at the end of the performance, when I will return to ask them to our playwright, director, and cast. And now, please sit back and enjoy Nowhere Man.
Scene 1. Isamu Noguchi, 37, stands in a pool of light and addresses the audience.
I was on the road between LA and San Diego, on my way to pick up material from a stone supplier, when I heard the news on the car radio. At the time, I wasn't thinking about Japan or my father who lived there, or the war in Europe. I was thinking about Ginger Rogers' head. I was imagining how it would look carved in pink Georgia marble. Head busting, as I like to call it, was my main source of income as a sculptor. It wasn't the sort of work I wanted to make my life's labor, but for now, it paid the bills. And no one in New York was interested in the new art I was pursuing. That is the main reason why I drove to California in my Ford station wagon in the summer of 1941. I wanted to add the Hollywood elite to my clientele of the rich and famous. Miss Rogers was one of my first customers, and I was determined to do a good job of her head. But there was another reason why I came west. I wanted to connect with the Japanese Americans there. You see, I was searching for my identity, not as an artist, but as a human being. The news from Pearl Harbor, as terrible as it was, illuminated that search. I saw for the first time how I might commit myself to being something bigger than myself. Here was an opportunity to finally belong. Back in New York, I had had little contact with other Nisei, the Japanese American born children of Japanese immigrants. Now I was determined to change that. With a small group of like-minded colleagues, I founded the Writers and Artists Democracy in San Francisco. We believed that the forces of justice would keep our people safe from the bigotry of the war hysteria after Pearl Harbor. We were wrong. Just 3 months after the attack, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, calling for the evacuation of enemy aliens from the West Coast. The enemy aliens were us. Being an East Coast Nisei, however, I was not detained. After returning briefly to New York, I traveled to Washington, D.C., where I believed that I could be a spokesperson for our people. There, I met John Collier, Commissioner of Indian Affairs. And that's when my life took the strangest turn.
Scene 2, the office of John Collier in Washington, D.C.
Mr. Noguchi, forgive me for keeping you waiting.
It's quite all right. Since I've arrived in Washington, I've become quite accustomed to waiting.
You've met with other officials then?
Quite a few. And none of them had the vaguest idea of what to do with an earnest Japanese-American artist.
That's not surprising. They're bureaucrats, and they have their agendas. And Japanese Americans, well, I'm sure you know about the relocation centers.
Yes, and that's why I'm here. I want to help.
Help?
I may be a Nisei, Mr. Collier, but I'm first an American. So are the vast majority of Nisei. I want to help both them and my country.
Oh, that's very interesting and admirable. And as a Nisei who has achieved fame in your field, that should count for something. By the way, I saw your fountain at the Ford Building at the World's Fair in '39. Very impressive.
Thank you. It was a challenging experiment, but a failure. Although I did learn something about working with a magnesite.
Well, you're an exacting artist.
Probably too exacting. I can't say anyone in New York has shown any interest in my proposal for public works. But that's not important now. I just want to help.
And I think I know a way you can.
Oh.
Mr. Noguchi, all my life, long before I took this job, I've been working tirelessly as an advocate for American Indians. And I've come to realize that there's something just as important to their well-being as political and economic power, and that is culture. To rise in the world, the Indians need to regain pride in their arts and crafts, music, dance, literature. This is what gives them their identity as a people, and it is as crucial as anything else to their survival.
And how does that relate to the Nisei?
Well, they too need to reconnect with their culture, not the culture of the present-day warlords of Japan, but the traditional Japanese arts and crafts that go back thousands of years, traditions that you have studied and integrated into your own work. See, you, sir, are in a unique position to create something good out of this unfortunate situation. Through your art and teaching, you can put your countrymen and women in touch with their past. By doing so, you could be enriching their lives, giving them hope in a time of distress, and offering them useful work that they could pursue in their post-war rehabilitation.
Yes, I see what you're saying. It's an intriguing idea, but how would it work? I haven't gotten anywhere with the War Relocation Authority.
Now, that's where I come in. You see, Mr. Noguchi, I am in a unique position here too. One of the relocation camps is being built as we speak on Indian reservation land in Poston, Arizona. I can send you to Poston to set up a school for the internees, and that could be just the beginning. In time, well, you could help transform this center into a cooperative community.
I'd be a visiting artist.
No, you'd be living there, working right alongside the other Nisei, teaching, instructing, organizing.
As another internee.
No. You would be a volunteer. You'd be free to come and go as you please.
And the War Relocation Authority would allow that.
Yeah, you just leave all the details to me. Then I take it you're interested?
Yes, very much so. As you say, this is a unique opportunity. When would I start?
Well, the camp should be ready to open within a few months, certainly by May. Could you be ready by then?
I think so. Could I bring other Nisei artists with me? This sounds like too big a project for one man.
I don't see why not. You go back to New York, get your team together, and I'll start the ball rolling here.
Mr. Collier, I want to thank you for this opportunity.
And I thank you for stepping forward, as difficult as that may be.
I don't know. I think I've been waiting for an opportunity like this for a long time.
Well, now you have it.
Scene 3, a sidewalk cafe in New York City. Sorry I'm late, another meeting.
It's all right. I know you're a busy man, Eitaro. Do you want something?
I'm fine. I want you to know I've been thinking a lot about your plan.
Oh?
And I think it's wonderful.
Then you're on board.
Absolutely. So tell me, how many others will be joining us?
I'm afraid there aren't any others.
What? Not any of your West Coast friends?
The writers and artists for democracy talk big when it comes to the rights of the fellow Nisei, but not when it comes to action.
Bunch of weak-kneed liberals.
Liberals? Oh no. To be liberal in wartime is to rock the boat, and they wouldn't want to do that. They're a bunch of scared rabbits, afraid to speak up that the US government will come looking for them. They're all loyal Americans, every last one of them.
Oh, the hell with them. Anyway, we should be able to corral some of our leftist friends here.
I've tried. I'm afraid they're just as uninterested. They may be card-carrying communists, but they don't see anything wrong with Roosevelt rounding up potential enemies. Isn't Stalin doing the same in Russia? Hitler in Germany?
Fools. So, it's just you and me, then?
That's right. You're not having second thoughts, are you?
Absolutely not. I'm with you all the way.
Good.
So, what's the game plan? When do we start?
Well, we can leave for Poston anytime. The internees won't be arriving until later in the month, and it'll give us time to set up shop, get to know the camp officials, gather art supplies.
Wait a minute, but we're only going to visit one camp?
We're not visiting Poston, Eitaro. We are going to be living there.
What?
I thought I made that clear when we last spoke.
Ed, we were going to be visiting artists. I assumed we'd be spending a few days at each camp.
I'm sorry if you got that impression.
Now you're saying we'll be living there? For exactly how long?
I don't know. As long as we're effective. As long as the internees need us.
You're asking me to leave the city to go live in some godforsaken desert in Arizona? Look, I'm willing to help teach classes for a month or two, but what you're talking about is something much bigger. I have a life here, a career.
So do I. But this is more important right now. There's a war going on, and our people are being singled out for...
I don't know these people. They live 3,000 miles away. The only connection we have is that our parents all came here from Japan.
Well, isn't that enough?
No, it's not. Sure, I'd like to help them, but you can't expect me to put my life on hold for months, maybe years, just to teach a bunch of farmers arts and crafts.
Well, it's not just that. It's connecting with our own flesh and blood, our roots.
My roots are right here. And so are yours. You're a New Yorker, an artist. You may have spent a few years in Japan as a child, but that's all in the past. You're an American, goddammit.
And aren't they too? And their parents who came here looking for a better life. Do they deserve what's happening to them?
Of course not. But what good is it going to do for us to join them in an internment camp? Can't we do more for them by speaking up for them here?
No, I've already tried that. No one will listen.
This idea of yours, it's crazy. We'd be putting ourselves in harm's way.
No, we'd be volunteers. We'd be free to come and go. Collier assured me of that.
I don't trust the government anymore.
Well, I trust Collier. He's a man of his word.
Maybe. But it's still crazy.
Sometimes you have to be a little crazy if you want to change things, Etaro.
I'm sorry, Isamu. I can't do this. And I don't think you should either.
I'm doing it.
Scene 4, Isamu's apartment in New York City.
Should I bring these?
Where do you plan to go swimming? In the Colorado River?
There may be a pool.
Sure. It'll be right next to the sauna and the steam room. This isn't a country club you're going to, you know.
I'll bring them just in case.
And I thought I was the optimist in the family.
Little sisters are always optimists, and for good reason. They know exactly how to get their way. By crying to Mama.
And if she were alive, she'd tell you not to do this.
No, she wouldn't. For her, life was an adventure.
Maybe so. But she always looked out for her children.
Really? What sane Caucasian woman would take a 2-year-old 5,000 miles across the ocean to Japan?
She wanted you to experience your heritage.
Only to have us both rejected by my father, the great poet.
I thought he wanted you to come.
Oh, he did. But his hospitality dried up when we arrived. His Japanese wife couldn't tolerate her husband's half-blood bastard and his former American lover living under the same roof. No way was I going to replace her son as the firstborn. So, once again, we were on our own.
Is that why you're doing this? Because of your hatred for him?
I don't hate him. I hate what he's doing. Writing propaganda for the warlords.
Well, at least you know who your father is.
Poor Els. She never told a soul, did she? Not even you. But we always had our suspicions, didn't we?
Yes. One of her students at the English school in Yokohama.
That was Mother. Unconventional to the end.
Once, when you were away, I remember scolding her for being a socialist.
What did she say?
I'm not a socialist, dear. I'm an anarchist.
Oh, she always knew how to shake things up. In Japan, the other children would tease me for being the half-breed son of the red-haired foreign woman. I had no friends. It was me and her against the world. She was my world. She'd go off in the morning for a long commute to Yokohama, and I'd come home from school to a darkened house and wait for her. I'd stare out the window until night fell, and I saw her tiny figure coming up the road from the train station. Only then did I feel safe.
She did so love you, Isamu. She told me many times while you were away. She missed you so.
I know. But I had to make my own way in the world, and I knew she was in good hands with you. You do understand, don't you?
Yes, and I'm sure she would want you to help the Nisei, but not if it takes you away from your work. That was more important to her than anything.
You needn't worry about my work. The Nisei will inspire me, and I hope to inspire them.
You won't inspire them much with these boots.
What's wrong with them?
I don't think West Coast Nisei wear cowboy boots.
Why not? They live on ranches, don't they?
They're farmers, not ranchers.
And what makes you such an expert on Nisei?
I think I know more about ordinary people than you do.
No, you don't.
You're an artist. Your head's in the clouds.
So, you're a dancer.
I was a dancer.
And you will be again.
I don't think so. I doubt Martha Graham wants to make room for a former company member who's developed a gimp leg.
And you said you were the optimist in the family.
Maybe the truth is I'm more of a realist. I know my limitations.
Meaning that I don't know mine?
Why go out there when you have so much to live for here? What if Miss Graham asked you to design the set for her next ballet? You know how much she loved your set for Frontier.
I'm not leaving forever. I'll be back before you know it.
I worry about you. You'll be a fish out of water in Arizona.
You said I could swim in the Colorado River.
Don't be silly. You know you're the only family I have.
I'll be back. Believe me.
Then promise me one thing.
What is it?
If it doesn't work out, if the conditions are intolerable, that you won't try to soldier through, not for Mother or for your father or anyone or anything, that you'll come home.
When I was little, I told Mother I wanted to be an artist, not a soldier, because soldiers always die, even generals.
Then you promise.
I promise, little sister.
Then you can take your old cowboy boots. But please leave this behind.
No, not my pith helmet.
Scene 5. The office of Wade Head, director of the Post and Relocation Center.
It's an honor to have you as our guest here at Poston, Mr. Noguchi.
Thank you, Director Head. But I'd prefer to think of myself as a volunteer.
Tell me, are your accommodations satisfactory?
Room A, Barrack 7, Block 5 is quite adequate. I'm very happy to be living under the same conditions as the internees.
Oh, no, hardly that. As a guest, you have a whole room to yourself. Some families are living in half that space.
I never asked for preferential treatment.
Of course you didn't. But as the guest of the War Relocation Authority, we decided to give it to you.
That's very thoughtful of you. But I wouldn't want people to think that...
People will think what they want to, regardless of what we say or do, Mr. Noguchi. I've only been here a few weeks, and I can already see that the Nisei and Nisei are a gossipy lot. But maybe that's not your experience on the East Coast.
I don't know many Japanese Americans where I live. That's one of the reasons I wanted to come here.
And we're very grateful that you did. With your artistic expertise, I imagine you'll do wonders with these people. God knows we want to keep them busy. The busier they are, the less trouble they'll cause.
Speaking of art, I was wondering when I might expect to receive the art supplies that I ordered before I arrived here.
Well, I'm afraid I've been so busy getting the camp up and running that I haven't had a chance to requisition your order yet.
Well, in that case, I'd like to drive into town to get them myself.
No problem. Of course, you'll have to fill out a travel request form.
Mr. Collier told me that I could come and go as I please.
Did he? Well, I'm afraid he misspoke. The War Relocation Authority has rules and regulations that no one is excluded from. I'm sure you understand. Just fill this out and return it to me.
All right.
I imagine we do things a bit slower here in the Southwest than they do in New York, but you'll get used to it.
I suppose I have no choice.
Oh, but you did have a choice, Mr. Noguchi. And you chose to come here. And as I said, we're very grateful that you did. Was there anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Well then, good luck with the Arts Center. I used to paint a bit myself, watercolors mostly, but I just don't have the time anymore. Maybe when I retire.
Well, that's very interesting, sir, but I'm a sculptor, not a painter.
I knew that. You're famous, Mr. Noguchi. Even here in lonely little old Poston, Arizona. We know all about you.
Scene 6. Isamu's Arts and Handicraft Center at Poston. He sits at his desk. Henry, 19, sits across from him.
Well, I think we've waited long enough. We'll bring any stragglers up to speed when they get here. I am Isamu Noguchi, and you are...
Henry.
Last name?
Itano.
Well, Henry, I want to thank you for coming to our first class. Do you have any experience with arts and crafts?
Nope.
Not a problem. I imagine that's true for many of our people here. What area do you think you might be interested in? Ceramics?
You mean like making pots and stuff?
That's right.
No.
How about painting?
No.
Origami?
What's that?
It's making animals and other things out of folded paper.
No.
What area of art would you like to explore?
I don't know. I never thought about it.
But you came here today to take this class.
I only came because I'm bored.
Bored.
The only academic classes you can take here are for high school, and I graduated 2 years ago. The only sports they play are baseball and basketball, and I hate baseball and basketball. I work part-time at the mess hall cleaning up, and I hate that. Most of the time I spend reading in my room or hanging out with some of my friends. So when I saw the sign for your class, I thought, why not check it out?
I see. And am I boring too?
I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet.
Well, we'll see how things develop once some of the other gets here.
Others? No one else is coming.
How do you know that?
The older men aren't interested. They'd rather tend to their vegetable gardens. And the guys my age would rather play baseball or flirt with girls.
I see. And what about the girls?
Oh, I'm sure some of them would like to come, but their families won't let them.
And why not?
They know the girls are only interested because they think you're good looking and single. And the fathers don't want you to seduce their daughters.
What?
I'm just telling you what they think.
Well, someone ought to straighten them out.
It would definitely help if you were married. Everyone here is married.
Sorry, I don't measure up to the standard, but I assure you, I didn't come here to seduce young women.
Why did you come here?
Henry, I'm the teacher. I'm supposed to be asking the questions.
Don't want to talk about it? It's okay with me.
I didn't say, look, I came here to help, to give you, our people, something constructive to do, to help pass the time in this place, to find an outlet for your creativity, to learn something about your heritage.
Why do you say our people? You're not like us. They say your mother was an American.
That's true. I'm only half Japanese, but I'm still Nisei, like you.
Have to come here. You chose to. We had no choice.
You're right. I didn't have to come. I'm a volunteer. I came to help.
Some of the men say you came to spy.
Is that what your parents believe?
My mother doesn't say anything against you, but that's just the way she is. My father's not here.
Well, where is he?
He's back in Manzanar, in a hospital. He's got TB. They won't let him come here until he's better.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He'll be here soon. At least that's what my mom says.
Who do people think I'm spying for? The Japanese?
Oh, the American government. They don't believe you'd come here all the way from New York just to teach art. They think you're here to find out who's disloyal.
Is that what you think?
I don't know. You seem pretty normal for an artist.
Thank you. Well, I'm not a spy, and you can tell that to your friends. Then maybe they won't be afraid to come here.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on that happening.
We'll see. In the meantime, you're here, and I think maybe if you looked around the art on that table, you might find something that interests you. What do you say?
Okay. What's this?
It's a print from the late Edo period.
He's a funny looking kid. Why's he got a hatchet?
It's to scare away bears. He's called Kintaro, the Golden Boy. He's a hero in a Japanese children's story. My mother gave it to me before she died.
Oh.
She loved Japanese art and literature. She took me to Japan when I was 2 to learn about my heritage and to visit my father.
And where's he now?
In Japan. He's a poet.
No kidding.
Look, Henry, I don't want to waste any more of your time or mine. So maybe it would be better if you left now. I wouldn't want to add to your boredom.
Okay. A playground.
What?
You asked me what I wanted to do here. I want to build a playground.
A playground? That's not exactly what I...
have a baseball field to play in. But my little sister and her friends have to play in the dust and the dirt. There's no playground here for them with slides and swings and stuff like that.
Well, that's too bad.
What, you don't make playgrounds?
No. Well, I designed one for a park in New York City, but it never got built.
Maybe you can make it here.
I don't know. Look, why don't you come back tomorrow? We can discuss this further and maybe together find something else that you would like to do.
I'll think about it. I'm sorry about your mother.
Thank you. And see if you can bring along a friend.
Scene 7, spotlight up on Ailes.
How are you, brother? Things are not so calm here as they were when you left. The war has revved up the racism against Anisei. People smash their store windows, beat them up in the street. I thank God I look more Caucasian than Japanese. I continue to work at Macy's. I don't miss a dance troupe so much anymore, even though I spend about as much time on my feet as when I danced. I've been reading about the relocation camps, and I don't see how you can stand it there. No fruits and vegetables, no milk. The diet is not so good for your delicate stomach, and the desert heat will make you wilt. For what? To teach art to people who probably don't even care about such things? You must give up this foolishness and come home.
Really, Alice, it's not so bad here. The internees grow their own fruits and vegetables, and I eat them daily. And I'm getting used to goat milk. Sweeter than cow milk, but it's okay. And as far as the desert, it has a stark beauty all its own. I like to walk in it at night when the air is surprisingly cool, in the early morning when the sunrise showers the blue sky with gold. And while my classes are slow to fill up, I have a promising young man who I feel has great potential.
You have one student? You have to go to 3,000 miles to be a tutor. I really don't understand you, Isamu, and that's the truth. You have gone about finding your identity in a very strange way. I miss you, brother. I even miss your stupid cowboy boots. Please, come home.
Scene 8, the Arts and Handicrafts Center. Isamu enters wearing a polo shirt, shorts, his pith helmet, and cowboy boots. He is carrying a tote bag filled with mesquite wood. Behind him comes Henry, carrying an armful of mesquite.
God, it's hotter than hell out there.
You think so? I guess I'm getting used to it.
I'm never gonna get used to it.
The desert is a special place, Henry. It tests the soul.
I don't care about my soul. It's my body that's burning up.
Come, it's not that bad.
Not bad? This morning, my little sister woke up crying. There was black goo in her hair. It was melted tar paper off the roof that dripped down on her while she slept. Last time that happened, Mom was able to wash it out with soap, but this time, the tar was so stuck to her hair that Mom had to cut it off.
Well, that's awful. Have you complained to the block representative?
What can you do?
He can report it to the director.
Why would he care?
This is still the United States. People can speak up when something's wrong and be heard.
Well, maybe for you, not for us.
I'll talk to the rep. If that doesn't work, I'll go to the director myself.
I'd change my clothes first.
What's wrong with the way I'm dressed?
You look like you're on some expedition in the jungle.
You think I look funny?
It doesn't bother me. But the others think it's a riot. I mean, the cowboy.
Well, they're very comfortable in this terrain. Can we get back to your sister?
Get it. We moved her cot away from the wet patch, and we put a pot on the floor to catch the tar. You're really gonna carve stuff out of this dead wood?
It isn't just any dead wood, it's mesquite. And yes, that's what I intend to do. It'll keep me busy until the Claire order arrives.
Why didn't we just cut down some fresh, good-looking wood?
Because we're not supposed to cut down live trees. And anyway, fresh wood doesn't have any personality.
You call this personality?
Absolutely. Look at these twists and swirls. This is wood that has lived. It has a story to tell.
All it says to me is I'm dead wood.
That's part of the artist's job, to bring the dead to life.
And why'd you bring this stone back?
I like the shape, the hue, the heft of it, the way it fills space. Stones are the skeleton of the earth. They speak to me. Now this one's telling me inside it is the spirit waiting to be released. It's saying, come, Noguchi, take up your chisel and free me.
That's crazy.
You have to be a little crazy to be an artist.
I don't hear anything.
You have to concentrate. Use your imagination like a child does. A great sculptor once told me, when an artist stops being a child, he stops being an artist.
Who said that?
Constantine Brancusi. I worked in his studio in Paris. He showed me what sculpture could be.
You lived in Paris?
For 2 years, on a Guggenheim Fellowship.
This is the first time I've been out of California. And look where I end up, in the stinking hot desert.
You won't be here forever, Henry.
How do you know? You can come and go as you please. We have to stay behind the barbed wire fence. If we don't, the men in the watchtowers have machine guns.
I don't think they'd shoot. I know they wouldn't.
Want to bet?
You think I'm different, but the longer I'm here, the more I feel like everyone else.
It's not the same. It'll never be the same for you. Do you know how much time they gave us to leave our home? 1 week. We had to sell everything that we couldn't carry with us. My father got $25 for his Buick. 25 bucks! That strawberry crop is almost ready to harvest. Neighbors said they would pick it for us. Some neighbors. We haven't seen a cent of the money from those strawberries. Oh, but we decided no one was going to get their hands on our chickens, though. The day before we left, I killed all 18 of them. Mom cooked them up with soy sauce and sugar and packed the meat in mason jars. We ate the chicken on the train ride to the assembly center at the racetrack at Tanforan. Blinds on the train were shut, so we couldn't see where we were going, and nobody had to see us. When we got to Tanforan, they housed us in horse stalls. They'd whitewash the walls, but they couldn't get out the horse hairs or the reek of the horse shit. We stayed there for 3 months.
I'm sorry, Henry. I'm really sorry.
Of course, it's not so bad here. We even have toilets that flush. There's no walls between the toilets. When my little sister has to go, my mom stands in front of her, so the other women can't see her pee.
Come here, Henry. I want to show you something.
What's that?
It's a blueprint for a playground.
Huh?
You said you wanted a playground for your sister. Well, here it is.
It doesn't look like a playground.
Well, no, not a traditional one, but it's even better. See, here's a spiral slide with water flowing down it.
What's that blue circle down at the bottom?
That's a wading pool. And over here is a bigger swimming pool for the older children and adults.
And what's that pointy thing?
That's a pyramid made of metal bars that the children can climb on and play games inside.
Hey, is that a turtle?
Yes, a sandbox in the shape of a turtle.
I've never seen a playground like this.
Neither had Robert Moses, head of the New York Parks Commission. I got laughed out of his office.
I like it.
The playground is just a start. I want to make Poston a real community where our people can feel at home. There'll be a bandstand here across from the pool and for concerts and dancing and more sports fields for games and gardens here and there, a chapel here and a community center for meetings.
And what's this over here with the crosses on it?
That's a cemetery.
You mean for people who die here?
Yes.
I wouldn't want to die in this place.
Neither would I.
Scene 9. Director Head's office. He is looking over Isamu's building plans.
This is all very interesting.
Of course, these are just preliminary specs, so the details will be ironed out in the next round.
Yes.
And to keep costs down, I'd have internees do the construction. It'd be more meaningful work for them than some of the jobs they currently fill here.
Uh-huh.
Now, if we start with the sawmill and the brick factory, they could provide the lumber and bricks to construct the other buildings. I would supervise all the work, of course.
Before you go any further, Mr. Noguchi, I must tell you that my superiors were greatly impressed by your creative ideas.
Well, I am very pleased to hear that.
If you were designing a model community in the outside world, this would be marvelous.
Outside.
Yes. What you are proposing is a permanent community. Poston, along with the other 9 relocation centers, you understand, is a temporary community.
I know that. But in the meantime, this could give the residents a real sense of community. And after the center is closed, it could be used for another population, perhaps American Indians who live on the adjoining reservations.
That's an interesting thought, but the WRA feels it would be too ambitious at this time to tackle such a project when the present accommodations are sufficient.
But you'd have free labor. The internees.
We need to keep the internees doing the jobs they're doing. This work is vital to the operation of the center. If we had them building structures like you propose, who would be running the mess hall, attend to the vegetable gardens?
They could work a few hours each day on the construction and devote the rest of the time to their regular jobs.
I'm afraid that's not practical.
Practical? These plans are meant to be practical. They would make the internees happier, more content, less troublesome, as you put it. A swimming pool, more athletic fields, a chapel. People would use them.
Just like they're using the Arts and Handicraft Center? You're not exactly packing them in, are you?
I've suspended classes for the time being. This project is more important.
It may be to you, but I doubt very much it is to the internees. They're mostly farmers and laborers, and they're very happy enough with what they have here.
Mr. Head, I came here to make a difference, to use my skills to help improve life. That's how Mr. Collier got me interested in coming here in the first place.
Mr. Collier is a fine man and a great advocate for the Indians, but his ideas do not always match up with the realities that we are facing.
And what reality is that?
May I remind you, Mr. Noguchi, that we are at war, and our top priority is winning the war, not making life easier for the internees.
Mr. Head, your own publication talks about the center in a very different way. Quote, Poston is a part of a democratic America, and so are its volunteer citizens. Unquote. Is this the way you treat citizens?
We treat them as well as we can, sir. I've told you the decision of my superiors. I suggest you save these plans for a future public works project when you get back to New York.
Can I speak frankly?
Of course, as you say, this is democracy.
I don't think it's the expense or the workload or any of the other reasons you've given me for rejecting my proposal. I think the WRA is ashamed of what it's doing here, and they don't want the rest of the country to know what's happening when the war is over. They want it forgotten, and for good reason.
Well, that's an intriguing theory. I'll be sure to pass it on to my superiors.
I don't mean to offend you, but I feel...
I know how you feel, Mr. Noguchi, and I fully understand your disappointment. I almost forgot.
What's this?
It's the pass you requested to go to town and get your art supplies. I assume you still want it?
Thank you.
Mr. Noguchi, you shouldn't think that the WRA is prejudiced against your people. But at a time of war, we must remain vigilant. I don't see myself as an overseer in this center, just a man doing his duty as a loyal American.
I'd like to think that that's what we all are, Mr. Head. Loyal Americans.
Scene 10.
Dear Mr. Collier, just wanted to let you know how things are going here in Poston. Yesterday, for the first time since my arrival, I drove into Parker. As you know, it's no metropolis, just a one-horse town. But for me, after weeks of being cooped up at the center, going there was a grand adventure. It felt strangely thrilling to walk the streets freely, nodding at passing people, looking in store windows. I know now how the prisoner feels when released on parole, or the soldier freed from the battlefield on leave. Then I went into the store to get my order for art supplies. The man behind the counter looked at me strangely. I could hear him saying to himself, "Who is this grinning job? And what does he want with 200 pounds of clay?" I imagine him calling the sheriff after I left, reporting my presence in his fair community. Now I know how the Nisei must feel since the bombs dropped on Pearl Harbor, hated simply for the color of their skin and the angle of their eyes. This hatred is like a poison that enters the bloodstream and kills something inside you. If I sound slightly depressed, I am. Things are not working out here the way you and I expected. My building proposals have been rejected. My classroom is empty. I reside in a no man's land, trusted by neither the Nisei nor the authorities. I very much look forward to your visit here next week. Any time you can give me in your busy schedule would be greatly appreciated. We have much to discuss. Your friend, Isamu Noguchi.
Scene 11, the Arts and Handicrafts building. Isamu is at the work table molding a woman's bust. Henry enters. He has a black eye that he tries to hide.
You're late.
Got held up. Family stuff.
How's your father?
He's okay. Still coughing, but the doc says his lungs are clear of the TB.
That's good.
What's that?
The head of Miss Ginger Rogers.
You mean the babe who dances with Fred Astaire?
I don't think she'd appreciate that description, but yes.
I've seen all their movies.
Good for you.
Why are you making her head?
Because she paid me to. I started it before I came here, and now I have plenty of free time to finish it.
Doesn't look much like her.
Of course it does. Maybe you've been too busy looking at the rest of her to notice.
Very funny.
I'm making her as good as I can. It may be my last bust.
Why?
Because I want to make art that I believe in, not just to please a client and make a buck.
You mean like with the mesquite wood?
That's right.
It's so ugly.
No, it's not. Anything can be used to make sculpture, Henry. Not just clay and wood, but stones, bones, paper, strings, wire, plastic. You see, sculpture mustn't have boundaries. It should encompass the whole world. Everything that fills space is sculpture. A playground, a garden, a theater stage, this room. Does that make sense to you?
I don't know. It sounds complicated.
No, it shouldn't be. It should be the simplest thing. Hey, what happened to you?
It's nothing.
The hell it is. You've got a real shiner.
No big deal. I just had a little disagreement.
You were in a fight. Did someone do this to you because you've been coming here?
No. Not exactly.
Well, what does that mean?
It was more about you than about me.
Me?
I told you about the two women who were fighting over you outside the mess hall the other day.
Ugh, that's ridiculous. I haven't gone near either one of them.
No matter. Their husbands are jealous and angry as hell.
Well, that's insane.
One of them told me that if you don't leave, he's going to the director and demand that you be sent away. I told him to shut his big mouth, and that's when he hit me. But I gave him as good as I got.
Henry, I appreciate your loyalty, but there's no reason for you to get...
I knew that's what you'd say. That's why I didn't want to tell you.
Well, I'm glad you did. I take it the other husband didn't threaten you.
Wow. He said he's got a gun and he's going to shoot you.
Good God!
I wouldn't worry. He's just a big blowhard.
He actually has a gun.
Who knows? But he's an idiot. He won't do anything.
A gun!
Keep away from the women.
You don't have to worry about that.
You do like women, right?
I like them very much, but not enough to get shot over. That's not why I came here.
Have you made it with Ginger Rogers?
Of course not. You sound disappointed.
I was hoping to hear some juicy Hollywood gossip.
Sorry, I don't kiss and tell.
You know, you only talk about art. It gets boring after a while.
You got a very lively imagination in.
That's what everyone says.
I almost forgot. I brought you something from Parker.
What's that?
It's fresh, good-looking wood. Not like my gnarly old mesquite.
What am I supposed to do with it?
Build something. You're handy. You made those shelves for me with no problem. Maybe you're a good artist too. Maybe you can make something for your sister.
Are you trying to make up for the playground?
There was nothing I could do about that. I do think, however, it's time you put your imagination to good work.
All right. I'll think about it.
You can come here wherever you like. You've got a key.
Why are you doing this?
Doing what?
Being so nice to me.
Because you're here. Because you keep coming back. Because you've been good company.
Thanks. I don't know why you stay. If I were you, I'd be long gone from this place.
Sometimes I ask myself the same question. But I can't leave yet. Not when there's a chance things could change. You see, I have a friend coming in a few days. He's going to speak to the community. I think you'll like what he has to say.
Who is he?
Mr. Collier. He runs the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Another white man.
Not all Caucasians are bad, Henry.
They are to me. They put us in this prison. And for what? Some of the men here think we'd be better off going to Japan. At first, I didn't agree with them, but now I'm starting to think maybe they're right. They don't want us here. Why should we stay?
You don't really mean that.
But you know what I mean or don't mean. You can leave anytime you want. You're a free man.
Not so sure about that anymore.
Huh?
I mean, I have a husband gunning for me.
I told you not to worry about him.
Well, it's nice to be noticed at least. Even if it's for being a seducer of women.
I wish the girls were interested in me, because they aren't you.
Give them time.
Fine. That's all we have here.
And I want to see you make better use of yours. I want you to create something. That's what you're here for.
Scene 12. The Arts and Handicraft Center. John Collier is admiring one of Isamu's sculptures.
Fascinating. What do you call it?
My Arizona. Your speech was inspiring. The way you talked about the ideal society, one nurtured in the camps. Though democracy perish outside, here would be kept its seeds.
You think it made an impression on the internees?
Some of them, certainly.
Oh, I hope so. I've been giving it so often that I don't know anymore if anyone's listening.
They were listening. I hope the administration was listening too.
I know things haven't been going the way you expected they would, but you need to give it more time.
I've tried, but time's running out for me here. It's not just the authorities who are the problem. I thought I would bond with the Nisei. But if I've learned anything in the last few months, it's that we have nothing in common. Most of them have wives and children. I'm years older than most of them and a bachelor. They see me as an outsider who doesn't belong. Maybe even a spy.
That's absurd.
Besides that, they have little intellectual curiosity, not just about art and culture, but about why they are here, the principles of democracy. They just want to go home and get back to their lives.
And they will, in time. In the meantime, you need more than a speech to lift your spirits. And I've heard there's an exhibition of your art in a museum in San Francisco.
Yes, it opened a week ago.
You haven't seen it yet?
No, I've been too busy.
I think you should go to San Francisco. See how your work is inspiring people. You need a breather. This place isn't doing you any good right now. And you can't expect to do good for anyone else. You'll come back with a fresh perspective on things.
With all due respect, Mr. Collier, I think it's too late for that.
You want to leave?
Yes, but not to go back to New York. I would like to do what you're doing.
I don't understand.
Going from center to center, giving lectures on art and Japanese culture. Maybe teach a short-term class for a week or so. This long-term residency isn't working. And maybe the internees at the other centers might be more receptive.
Have you proposed this idea to Mr. Head?
No, I haven't had much luck with him. I thought if you were to talk to him first, he might be more receptive to the idea.
Oh, I'd be happy to speak to him on your behalf. We're old friends, you know. But you should understand that he doesn't have the power to approve such a proposal. He'll have to go to Washington for approval, and that could take some time.
Yes, I seem to be drowning in red tape. It smothers me, as much as his heat.
You need to get out of here for a while. Go to San Francisco, see your show.
I can't.
There you go again. Being a pessimist, you need to be positive.
You don't understand. I can't go because they won't let me.
What? Yeah, that can't be. You're
A volunteer? Maybe I was when I came here, but now I might as well just be another internee.
Well, that's absurd. They can't do that. Why didn't you tell me?
I didn't want you to get embroiled in this.
I'll talk to Head. It's not right.
Mr. Collier, I don't care about the art show. I just want to get approval to travel to other centers. It's my last hope.
Well, of course, I'll bring it up to him. But it's complicated. I was able to get you into Poston because of my position, but I don't have any jurisdiction in the other centers.
Whatever you can do.
Well, of course, I'll try. You know I will. I'll do everything within my power.
I know, and I appreciate that.
I feel terrible about all this. I mean, after all, you only came here because of me.
I'm not blaming you.
I will try to sell them on the travel. But if that doesn't work, we'll just have to get you out of here any way we can. Look, I'm not supposed to share this information, and you mustn't breathe a word of it to anyone. Head told me the WRA is planning on releasing all the mixed blood Japanese within the next few weeks. You will certainly be on that list. If the plan to visit the other centers comes through in the meantime, well, all fine and good. Otherwise, you can head back east and resume your life.
That's not the way I planned for this to end.
Yeah. Neither did I. But either way, you can't stay here any longer.
No, I don't think I can. I'm not strong enough. I thought I was, but I'm not. It's funny, really.
What is?
I'm not Japanese enough for the Nisei, and not Caucasian enough for the authorities. I'm nothing but a half-breed, and that's how I'm going to get out of here.
I wouldn't put it that way.
Wouldn't you?
Scene 13, the Arts and Handicrafts Center. Henry is alone, working on an art project. He hears footsteps and covers it with a sheet.
Hello. I didn't know you were here.
Stop by to check on something.
What's this?
Just something I'm working on.
Can I see it?
It's not finished.
I'd like to see it.
Okay.
A dollhouse.
It's not finished.
It's beautiful.
My sister.
So this is what you've been laboring on these last few weeks.
Do you like it?
Very much. Traditional, but contemporary. The roof.
I like to use pebbles. You're right that stones have character.
And the pathway is lined with the mesquite.
Character.
So the teacher has influenced the student after all.
I still have to put in the windows.
You might think mica. Give it an old look.
Yeah, I like that. Now, I have something to tell you.
Oh?
I'm leaving for a while.
Where are you going?
Utah.
You're not being relocated to Topaz Center.
No. I'm going to a farm. They're looking for volunteers to harvest beets. I'll get paid. Not a lot, but it'll be money my family needs when we go home. If we have a home.
How long will you be gone?
I don't know, a month? Maybe longer?
Well, that's fine.
It's not just the money. I need to get away from here. Not from here, but from the rest of this. I need to see new places, even if it's just a dumb sugar beet farm.
I understand, Henry, and I'm happy for you. When do you leave?
Tomorrow morning. It came up rather suddenly.
That's all right. The truth is, you see, I'll be leaving soon myself.
Really?
The WRA is releasing all the mixed bloods.
That's great. I'm glad you're getting out.
Yes, I think it's for the best.
Will you still be here when I get back?
I doubt it, but don't worry about the dollhouse. I'll make sure it's safe until you return.
Thanks.
What do your parents think of you going to Utah?
My father's okay with it. My mother, not so sure. I've never been away from the family.
That's how mothers are.
She'll be okay.
By the way, what were you planning to use for the door?
There isn't going to be a door.
Oh?
The doll people will be free to come and go as they please. Scene 14. Head's office.
I'm sorry your time here wasn't more productive.
So am I.
And I trust you won't look back on this experience unkindly.
I'm not planning to go out of my way to badmouth you if that's what you're worried about.
I've tried to accommodate you as best I could, Mr. Noguchi. I know it hasn't been easy for you here, but you must remember that you came of your own volition.
Look, Mr. Head, I don't have a beef with you or the WRA. I just want to get back to New York and my life there. I'm an artist, not an activist. If these last 6 months have taught me anything, it's that.
I understand. Papers are all drawn up for your release. All you have to do is sign where I've indicated. Oh, and there's one more thing, the questionnaire.
I filled it out.
Yes, but you left one question blank.
Oh,
Question 28.
I don't recall.
Question 28 reads, have you forsworn any and all allegiances which you may knowingly or unknowingly have held to the Emperor of Japan? If not, do you repudiate all such allegiances?
Oh, that.
Could you just fill it in, please?
Is this really necessary?
I'm afraid it is.
But I answered every other question.
The questionnaire must be completed.
It's questioning my loyalty as an American.
It's a loyalty questionnaire, Mr. Noguchi.
I answered every other damn question. Do you read Japanese? No. Do you write Japanese? No. Do you speak Japanese? Yes, but poorly.
So you just need to answer this one too.
I shouldn't have to declare my loyalty.
It's just a formality.
I should think my loyalty as an American was apparent in my being here.
Perhaps so, but the WRA wants to see it in writing.
They're assuming that I could be disloyal.
That's your interpretation.
Yes, it is. And maybe if you were in my shoes, Mr. Head, you would understand how humiliating that is.
Completing the questionnaire is a requirement for anyone seeking to be released.
Are you saying if I don't answer it, I'm not getting out?
You said yourself you're an artist, not an activist. You want to get back to your life. All you have to do is answer the question and we're done here.
I can't.
Why in heaven's name not?
You're right. I'm not an activist. I never really was. And I'm tired of trying to fight the system. I'm tired of trying to fit in with my people. But I did connect with one young man. I learned from him what it's like to be a Nisei and to live here as a prisoner in your own country. I may have gotten a taste of it, but Henry Itano is living it every day, and he will be living it when I'm long gone from here. For his sake, for all their sakes, I can't do this.
And you refuse to answer question 28.
I told you I can't.
Can't or won't?
I see them as one and the same.
Do you want to get out of here or not?
Desperately. But not at the price of denying who I am.
You said you were an artist.
I am. And an artist has to bear witness to the truth.
Don't you talk to me about the truth. We all have ideals, Mr. Noguchi. We try as best we can to live up to them. You asked me to step into your shoes. Did you ever think about what it's like to be in my shoes? Do you think it was easy for me to get your name on this list? The WRA didn't want to let you out, not after they got a file on you from the 4th Army Intelligence Division.
What file?
It names you as a suspicious person.
I have done nothing here that would be construed as suspicious.
This has nothing to do with your time here at Poston. It concerns your movements before you got here, your activities in San Francisco, Los Angeles, your meetings with a number of other Japanese Americans.
My activities? I was helping found the Nisei Writers and Artists for Democracy.
Some of the people in your group are suspected of having foreign sympathies.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And then some of your associates in New York have communist leanings.
They're not my friends. I hardly even know
And there's
them.
a visit that you made to Santa Barbara when you returned west.
I was visiting a friend who's an art collector.
There's an airport in Santa Barbara where you were staying.
Really? I've never seen it.
Then there's your trip to Carmel.
To visit a friend who's a sculptor. Is he a communist too?
No, but there's a naval base near Carmel. You may have visited that.
Really? And did you know I drove through Oceanside? There's a Marine base there, and I took photos for it for the Japanese. Would you like to see them?
Making light of this isn't going to help your situation, Mr. Noguchi.
When I am being accused of things I never did, where's the Army's proof?
Suspicion is enough in time of war. to delay your release, sir. Now, I bent over backwards to convince them to release you in spite of it all. I gave them my word that you were trustworthy.
And if I don't prove my loyalty by answering that question, it's going to make you look bad. Is that it?
Don't be a fool.
That's what my mother would call me if I did this. You see, Mr. Head, she was an anarchist. A very nice lady, but an anarchist just the same. She liked to shake things up.
You're making a big mistake.
Perhaps. But at least I'll be able to sleep tonight.
Scene 15, the Arts and Handicraft Center.
Dear Mr. Collier, I appreciate your efforts to get me a pass to travel to the other relocation centers, but now that that has been unsuccessful, I urge you to apply your efforts to getting my release. The government, as you well know, has made spurious charges against me that are untrue. I don't know how much longer I can stand the heat, the isolation. I'm very lonely, and not even my art is much comfort to me anymore. Please, help me. Yours truly, Isamu Noguchi.
Dear Isamu, I'm doing everything in my power to obtain your release, but as you are aware, the government is slow to process these matters, and I have my own issues to deal with. But remain hopeful that the time will come and you will be free. But for now, you must be patient. Your friend, John Collier.
Dear brother, I have talked to numerous officials here in New York, but no one seems able or inclined to help. The only group that is willing to assist are the Quakers. God bless them. When I hear more from them, I will be in touch. In the meantime, you must be brave and keep your spirits. Be strong, Isamu.
Strong. I've never felt more vulnerable in my life. I came here to help, and now I can't even help myself. The Nisei despise me. The authorities distrust me. I am neither Japanese nor American. I'm nothing else. Nothing.
I warned you this would happen, didn't I, Isamu? But you wouldn't listen to me. I would like to help, but I have to think of my own situation. If I were to write a letter in your defense, you'd only expose me to criticism too. What good would it do for me to be in the same spot that you are in? My advice is to find yourself a good civil liberties lawyer.
You must be patient.
You must be brave.
You must find a lawyer.
Be patient.
Be strong.
Careful.
Patient.
Strong.
Careful.
Patient.
Strong.
Patient.
Strong.
Careful.
Strong.
Patient.
Strong.
Scene 16. Head's office.
You wanted to see me.
Yes, Mr. Noguchi, I have some good news.
Oh,
You are going to be released.
without answering question 28.
That's right.
And the military has dropped its suspicions.
Well, no. You see, as director, I have the power to issue furloughs to internees, temporary releases.
Temporary.
Yes, good for 30 days.
30 days.
That's right. It's the best I could do under the circumstances.
A furlough.
Yes, a furlough.
I don't want it.
Take it. It's your only way out of here.
When I leave here, I am leaving for good.
I am going to tell you something, Mr. Noguchi, and I don't want you to repeat it to anyone. If you do, I will deny everything I am about to say.
Go on.
Furloughs are funny things, even in wartime, especially when it comes to civilians. People have a way of, shall we say, extending them.
What the hell are you saying?
I'm saying you take this pass and you get in your car and you drive out of here and you don't look back.
Is this some kind of trick?
No trick. I'm telling you to get out of here while you can.
They won't come after me.
Mr. Noguchi, the War Relocation Authority has more pressing matters to worry about than chasing after one Japanese-American artist. Trust me.
Why are you doing this?
Maybe because I'm sick of you moping around this place.
And I'm sick of everything in this place, from you down to the tar paper shacks.
I suppose we're even.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, maybe when you go back to New York, you won't think of me as some kind of monster.
I never thought of you as a monster, just a misguided bureaucrat.
And you, a misguided artist.
Sculptor.
Yes. Mr. Noguchi, I would wait until after dark before you leave. It wouldn't do much for the morale of the others to see you leave.
No. I suppose it wouldn't.
Scene 17, the Handicrafts and Arts Center. Isamu is packing up his artwork and putting them in boxes. Henry enters.
You're still here.
And you're back from Utah.
I got in yesterday. I would have stopped by sooner, but I thought...
My departure was delayed. I'm leaving tonight.
Tonight?
Yes. How was Utah?
Not as hot as here, but just as boring. I know now I don't want to spend the rest of my life picking sugar beets or any other goddamn vegetable.
Well, I'm glad you're back.
And I'm sorry you're leaving.
It's for the best.
I bet you won't miss anything about this place.
I'll miss you, Henry. I suppose you came for the dollhouse.
What's this?
Well, I don't know how many dolls your sister has, but I didn't think one more would hurt.
It's Japanese.
Yes.
I brought you something too, just in case you were still here. They're stones. I did a little rock hunting in Utah, smooth and shiny. I thought you might be able to do something with them.
Very nice. I'll take one as a souvenir, but I think you should keep the rest. You can use them for a walkway for your dollhouse.
All right.
Now, I have a favor to ask you.
What's that?
I'd like you to take over here in the center.
Take over what? Nobody comes here.
They might, knowing you're running the place. Maybe you can enlist some of the children, like your sister, to try their hand at crafts. You know the drill. And if that doesn't work, you at least can use it as your workshop. Finish your dollhouse. Maybe make something new.
Will the director allow that?
I've already talked to him, and he's all right with it.
Are you sure?
You've got to look for the best in people, Henry. Despite everything that's happened to you, life goes on, and this will end.
Maybe. But I won't forget this place. I won't ever forget.
No, you mustn't forget. But you must figure out a way to forgive.
Why?
Because that's the only way to go on living in this world. This is my address in New York. Write me. Let me know how you're doing.
Okay.
And say hello to your father for me. I'm sorry we never got to meet.
My father says he respects you for coming here.
Really?
He doesn't know much about art. but he knows people. And he says you're a good person.
Well, sayonara, Henry.
They shake hands. Henry reaches out and hugs Isamu.
Scene 18. Isamu stands alone in spotlight.
I left as Head suggested, after dark. I drove all night, only stopping for gas. I headed north through Flagstaff, and then east on Route 66 into Gallup, New Mexico. As I drove, I thought about everything that had happened to me since that day I heard the news of Pearl Harbor on the car radio. Things hadn't worked out the way that I hoped they would, but that didn't mean there wasn't a purpose to it all. As I drove on into Albuquerque, the sun started to rise, like some huge glowing stone, filling the darkened sky with light. And as the light spread across the horizon, I felt a curious calm come over me. I was at peace. I realized that it was okay that I didn't fit in, and that maybe I was meant to remain an outsider, that my identity didn't depend on whether I was Japanese or American or something in between, but that I was an artist. And maybe an artist needs to be on the outside so he can look in and see things as they truly are and share that truth with the world. And so I drove on into the bright new day.
Hello again. Well, that was quite a performance. And as we said, if you have questions, you can certainly post them in the chat box. In the meantime, we have a question for Mr. Otfinoski. Hi. This is quite a historical story, and certainly the parameters of Mr. Noguchi's life is there. What motivated you to write this play about Mr. Noguchi, and what were your thoughts about I guess taking a real life and historical with a historical perspective and creating a play that really wasn't just a documentary, that really told a story that went beyond, let's say, the historical record?
Well, the first part of that question is relatively easy to answer, and the second part probably harder. In my other life as a writer, I write young adult books, mostly nonfiction. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a book about Japanese internment camps, which I knew nothing about, and I learned a lot in the research. But the person who stood out the most for me in my research was this man, Noguchi. I mean, what would drive a person who didn't have to go to an internment camp to volunteer to go there and then get stuck there? And I thought there were some interesting answers as I studied his life. Obviously, it comes out in the play that he wanted to help, that he felt guilt about his father in Japan, what he was doing. But the most important reason was looking for an identity, to find who he was in the world, whether he was Japanese more or whether he was American or Japanese American. And that was what motivated him the most. I think that's what was the seed of the play. And hopefully that comes through. As far as the truth of it, all the characters really existed, including him, of course. well-researched. I had to create a play and not a documentary, as you mentioned. And to do that, I had to shape events in a certain way to make them dramatic. And I had to create one character who was Henry. Henry is only a fictional character in the play. And he had to exist because basically what we know about Noguchi's time at Poston is that it was very dull and boring and stressful, and that he really didn't connect to too many people at all. So there's not a play there. But by creating Henry, I gave him someone to relate to, someone he could mentor to, and someone who could help him find himself at the end of the play, I think.
Well, really interesting. I guess one other corollary to that is, in the play, Isamu felt that, and Collier also felt that certainly art was a way to reach people, to make their situation better. And, certainly, in modern times, in certain administrations, art is under attack. But certainly a major theme, as I heard it, was the ability of art to really change the situation. And in this context, it didn't really work. But what are your thoughts about the role of art in general, and certainly in the context of a situation like this?
Well, I think Collier was right. I think cultural connection is so important to any minority group or any ethnic group. And interesting enough, most of the other camps, and probably Poston at some point too, did have people who taught art and people who were artists who came out of there, people who went on to careers in art and found a great self-expression and help through art and through literature as well, and writing. So his experience was different from other people. And it certainly wasn't true that there weren't people who expressed themselves through the arts in the camps. It's just his experience was a negative one. But I do think it is important, and it still is important today.
Yeah. There was another comment that somebody posted, thus art is not an object, it's an experience. And this artistic film has been a brilliant experience.
Thank you.
There was another.
I just thought I saw a question that went by and said, how did this period affect his art? And I don't know if we know that, but I thought, his later art in any way, I don't know if we have an answer to that. But,
well, I don't think his art was not political for the most part. I mean, the My Arizona, which we show you at one point before the scene with Collier, was a rather political statement. It was a satire, I think. And he did a few things after this, but most of his art was a more universal and in a different vein. It wasn't political. So in a sense, it changed him. He withdrew from the world and expressed himself through art that everyone could relate to universally. And that's who he became.
And I believe...
I just wanted to piggyback on what
Chris.
Steven said. Hi, about how it affected his art after. Because unlike the play, it didn't really have a happy ending. Isamu was very depressed from this experience, and he never quite recovered from it. I don't know how it changes art, but depression, I think, helps all artists. But it was not a happy ending. He didn't have a sense of calm or peace after it. And I understand for the play reason it has to be that, and it's beautiful. But he was quite depressed, and it took a long time for him to get over it, and kind of never really quite did.
Yeah. What was I going to say? But his art went on, and he lived his life. He did marry for a short time to a younger woman, but he always felt an outsider. I think that stayed with him to the end of his life, that he never really fit in. And I, of course, give him the final speech that Chris has about the monologue about the, finding himself as an artist and being the outsider, which I think is a nice way to end the play. But I think in terms of his life, he always felt that outsiderness and never felt a part of a group. And maybe that did help his art in the long run.
Yeah, and he had a productive career. I mean, he lived into
tremendously so.
Well into his 80s, winning a number of awards. Steven,
and making his own museum as well on Long Island.
That's right,
Gucci Museum. Yeah.
So Steven, and certainly Mark, you've collaborated with Steven in terms of could you talk a little bit about understanding the characters and researching the source material in terms of Isamu's life and how this particular experience affected his art in general?
You want to take that on?
It came from Steven. I just helped him kind of turn it into our play and make it the effective play that it is. But it really is his research that, and I knew of Noguchi and I knew a bit about it, but I certainly didn't know this level and his involvement in the internment camps. And of course, everything was in the news recently about the, Asian American, prejudice and racism. And so this became much more, it was very exciting to be working on it and trying to understand it. And Steve and I have a kind of shorthand in working to bring it about. And we had a really wonderful cast.
We did.
Helped us bring about the play here in a Zoom format, which is not
in a very
the
constricted
ideal.
format,
which is
difficult.
I also saw a comment, was this play written for Zoom?
No.
The answer is no. It would be very different if it was staged. It was not, no characters would be on top of each other talking, and we would have a little bit more, there'd be a lot.
Exactly. And hopefully the next time we do it, it will be staged live for an audience, which would be really nice. Yeah, I think every historical play I've written, it's a play. So you have the real character, the historical character, then you've got the character in the play, and they're not exactly the same. I mean, a lot of the attributes of Noguchi are here. A lot of what he was is in the play, but there's also that sense of shaping a character and making something different. So a play is not a documentary. It's not a nonfiction book. It's a play, and it has to be dramatic. So you do take liberties. You know the facts and you use them as much as you can, but then you go ahead and you write the play. And sometimes things change.
Well, the one fictional character, as I understood it, was Henry.
Henry Atano, yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about the context of that character a little bit, Mark and Steven, and why you added the character and what you felt it added to the story?
Maybe we can bring in the character as well, the actor.
True, yes.
Wesley, we'd love to hear from him. Yeah, he's a composite of a number of different people. A lot of the experiences I researched and read about, Henry talks about in the play, especially his trip to Tanafor and how they lost everything in a week. They had to get ready to leave. And all those things are taken from real people's experiences. So Henry is sort of a composite in a way of other people, but he's also a character. And he's an interesting character because he grows a lot during the play. He starts out as this bored, young man with really nothing to do, and he finds a cause. He finds art. He finds himself as an artist because of Noguchi, and I think he gives something to Noguchi as well. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting relationship, and actually the heart of the play in many ways.
Oh, it is the heart. It is the heart and the through that holds it together.
Yeah. Somebody commented, Wesley, that you were terrific playing the ultimate snarky teenager.
You want to comment on that?
I only very recently grew out of that, so it's still in my bones.
Here's another question which you may be able to answer having done the research, but how long was the internment period for the Japanese in the war? I mean, when did they start to get released?
Some got released quite early, especially young people that had a chance to go to college, or some people had a job. They let them go early, especially among the younger people. But it basically, from 1942, around April, May, the camps were open. Before then, people were in relocation centers where they had to stay for 2 or 3 months, like in Tanfor, and then they went to the permanent camps, which were being built at the same time. But by 1945, before the war ended in Japan, basically most of them were released. The ones that weren't released were the ones that refused to sign that, answer that question about loyalty. Actually, there were 2 questions, and they called them the no-no boys. And these were considered the bad guys. They were the rebels, the ones that stood up for themselves and refused to knuckle under. And they were kept, I believe, at Mazarin, one camp, and there were thousands of them. And they were kept, some of them as late as 1946, after the war ended, before they were released. And some of them lost their citizenship as well, by taking a stand against this loyalty oath.
What was very interesting is Steve was writing a book on the West Coast, and on his way back, he stopped at one of the camps and was able to have a tour.
I did. Topaz, which is a beautiful museum's been built in this town of Delta, Utah, and Topaz is about 14 miles away. So the head of one of the people who ran the museum actually gave us a personal tour of the camp, and it's been razed. Most of them are totally razed to the ground, but there are hundreds of artifacts and signs that point out where buildings were. So it's a haunting experience to visit one of these camps. There are 10 of them in several states. They're still there, and memorials have been built to them as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting, because a question just came up: were the camps torn down, or do they remain standing? And it sounds like some of them are.
They were pretty much torn down. In fact, the one in Topaz, they sold the buildings to local people who would come and buy them, and then they'd move the building. And there are a number of homes in Delta that are actually from Topaz, the actual buildings that were used there. Some of them were community centers, some of them were houses or barracks. So the history lives on.
Yeah.
It's still there to be seen.
One thing that occurred to me, because one of the attendees asked, was there a class system environment that developed within the camp? Now, this one seemed to be mostly rural farmers and laborers. Was that true of the other camps, or were there camps where there were more
sophisticated, educated people? Or
yeah.
There were. I think Topaz was mostly people from San Francisco area, the Bay Area. So they were probably a little more sophisticated, more educated maybe, but I think there were educated people at all of them. I mean, I'm not trying to say they weren't, but we're looking at Noguchi's experience and the way he looked at it. And that's some of the things he said, that they just didn't understand who he was, what art was, even what democracy was. They just wanted to get back to their lives. They were ordinary people, many of them, good, ordinary people who were hardworking and who were, this prejudice and this racism was a terrible thing.
And as Mark pointed out, to this day, with anti-Asian stuff going on, so it's
everywhere. Yeah, it's a shame, and it shows you that history does repeat itself, and we haven't changed all that much in 80 years, unfortunately.
Yeah, somebody commented that the front steps of the Topaz barracks are still visible, as are the streets.
Yes, they are. Yeah,
in Topaz. So it must have been really an interesting experience.
It was. I wanted to go to Poston, which I don't think has as much as Topaz does, but we didn't make it down. That's near Yuma, in the southern part of Arizona. Mostly they picked remote, desert-like, terrible condition places to put these people. There are actually two there on the East Coast, not the East Coast, but in the eastern part of the states. There were two in Arkansas as well. The others were all out west.
Interesting. So the title "Nowhere Man," maybe we talk about that, but
it's a Beatles song.
He doesn't fit on either side. Did he ever refer to himself that way, as a nowhere man? Or?
No, I don't think he ever did. But I think he always felt apart from other people, and this formed his personality as an adult. And of course, we're looking at him when he was 37. He lived quite a long life, and he went on to do many other things. But I don't think he ever got over that separateness from others. The fact that he didn't quite belong anywhere, and maybe that was his calling. As an artist, made him who he was, and as great as he was.
Wow. Now you mentioned there were 10 camps. Were they all out west? Were there any camps on these?
No, I mentioned there's two in Arkansas. I can't remember the names of them right now. And I think there was one in Idaho, maybe Wyoming, Utah, Arizona had two, and California had two.
Yeah.
Tule Lake was the one, I think, where they put all the no-no boys, the ones that refused to sign the loyalty oath. And they were really, in a sense, the real heroes. They're the ones that stood up the most against the authorities and refused to buckle under, and paid a price for it, many of them.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think we have time maybe for one or two more, but this is an interesting question. Have you done any research on the prisoner of war camps? The person says they don't remember the source, but I did hear or read that prisoner of wars were treated better than the Japanese American internees.
That's very possibly true. You mean that, like, Germans who were brought over here in prison?
Yeah.
I know they worked in Maine and lumber camps and things like that, and I'm sure they were treated better because they were Caucasians, they were whites.
Mm-hmm.
The racism is just incredible against the Japanese Americans at this time. So I can believe that would be true. I'm not an expert on that subject, so I really can't say too much about it. But I'm sure that was true. And there were Germans and there were Italians who also were kept in camps, but most of those were nationals. They weren't actually Americans. They were national Italians or Germans who came over here and who were put into camps, and far few in number. And we're talking about over 110,000, 120,000 people in the Japanese American camps. And there were far fewer for the Germans and the Italians.
Yeah, somebody commented that they can't recall if the Japanese who were put in the camps were ever, quote unquote, forgiven by the U.S. government.
Well, they were. I think in Reagan's term, or maybe Ford, they actually gave them reparation. I think they were given each $20,000 as reparation for what they had. And the order that Roosevelt put through was rescinded finally after, 50 years or whatever.
Wow.
And it was during the Reagan era it started, and it continued into Bush and went on.
Yeah. And these were mostly citizens, right? The Japanese Americans that were...
The Niseis were American citizens. They were born here. The Issei, who were the parents, in many cases were not citizens. They were immigrants. Some of them were, some of them weren't, I suppose. And then there were the grandchildren as well, who came a little later. But most of the people who are alive now who were in the camps were children at the time, obviously, because of the time that's passed.
Actually, maybe this is for you and Mark. It's interesting question. Was there consideration of letting the audience know what Nisei means when the term is first used, rather than after about 15 minutes into the play? In other words,
well, no, actually, he does. Isamu does define it in the very first
monologue,
speech.
he does describe it, but
Very briefly.
not settled in. You miss it.
Yeah.
But it's a very good point. We wanted to make that because it's important for you to know what that.
Yeah, without making it a school book lesson, trying to keep it in the dialogue, keep it dramatic. He does mention who they were. The Nisei, we don't talk about the Issei, the parents, although the term is used in the play. I don't think it's defined. Maybe it should be.
Maybe we'll give it a little bit more weight in the opening monologue.
Yeah. Oh, great. I don't see any new questions, but we did get some comments on certainly what a brilliant play it was, and certainly how well the cast did and how engaging they were, especially.
Yeah, I'd love to see some questions for the actors, because they put a lot into this. So if there are any, I don't know. I'm looking at the...
Oh, that's interesting. I remember at the NAC, the writer who wrote, now I can't remember the name of the book, but it was made into a movie, and it was basically about an older guy and a teenager having an affair. But the question came up then was, how could a straight novelist write about a gay relationship? So somebody just asked, as a white playwright, they would be able to tell a story in my country. Was this ever an issue for you?
Well, it hasn't been yet, but it may become one. I don't know. Obviously, we have Asian American actors playing the parts, which is obviously very important. I think as a white playwright, I can write about other things. I've written many books about African American experience, and that's okay. I mean, and I think by the same token, I think that minority writers and playwrights should be able to write about the majority, or the white people as well. I mean, I think you have an imagination, you have a drive, you have a need to write about something. You should write about it, and you shouldn't be stopped just because of your skin color or your background or whatever.
Stephen, you mentioned the cast. Actually, I would like to ask the cast, and maybe they can just give a short answer each about how they approach their character, the level of research they might have done in the period, and maybe starting with Chris and going through the cast, how they.
Chris is a good one to start with. He did a lot of research on his own.
Yeah, so maybe you can talk briefly, each of the cast members, about how you, in fact, created your character.
Great, thanks, Stephen and Stephen. I kind of wanted to piggyback on what you guys were talking about. The woman that asked about being a white playwright and writing for, I can't remember quite what she said, but I always find it amazing when you do have a playwright, someone that's writing that's out of their experience, that hits the mark and that provides work for others that they aren't of their skin color. And that's happened for me many times in my career. So I'm incredibly grateful to Steven, Eric Overmeyer. There's just a whole lot of people that write correctly. And I think that can happen. And I think it happens in this experience. And I don't want to speak for Wesley and Sehee, but I think we're incredibly grateful that you've written this and that you've written it correctly and about a very important topic. That said, my research, there's so much work to be done, but so much of it is already in the script. And a lot of it for me was his voice. I shared that with Mark and Steven, because at the second rehearsal, like, there was a weird accent. I go, well, but that's kind of how he talked. And I think that's part of him not fitting in. Noguchi traveled so much by the time he was 25. So his accent was very European or British and a little Japanese. And I think that's part of what made him also not fit in with the Nisei. And for me, that was a huge part of it. And then just seeing his art, just seeing it and, seeing and hearing his voice. But there's so much work to be done. We're so blessed that we live in New York City, because the Leonardo da Vinci Art Center, where he first took his art classes on A and 10th, the church is still there.
Really?
Is when he comes back, and the address that I give to Wesley, that I give to Henry, is 33 McDougal Alley. I mean, these are all things that are near us, So, but there's so much more. So I really hope that the play goes on, because I think it has huge potential and it has a very strong voice that it needs to share right now. So thank you, Steven, and Mark. And
thank you, Chris.
Yeah, that wasn't a short answer, but sorry.
Yeah, somebody asked, Wesley, you're next, but somebody said, so when will we see the play staged live in the San Francisco area?
That would be nice.
There a producer out there?
I would like to briefly touch on the subject of Caucasian artists expressing experiences that don't necessarily belong to them. I think it's always fine. I think part of the mission of the artist is to expand the horizons of your audiences as well as your own horizons. I think a really important part of that process, if you're telling someone else's stories, is to make sure that you include those people in the collaboration and the creative process of that story. For example, I have no say in this. I think if this were to go on to a stage production and we were to dive deeper into the substance of this story, it would be very productive, for example, to bring on a Japanese American dramaturge who can speak very intimately to those experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In terms of preparation, I will give you the ugly, bald, unattractive truth. I did not do a lot of research into the internment process for Japanese Americans. I learned a lot about it in school. I've learned a lot about it through my friends who are Japanese American. I am Korean. In order to sort of dig into the more visceral elements of Henry's anger and outrage, I sort of dug into, ironically, this Korean phenomenon, which is, we call it Han. It's this feeling of moral outrage and powerlessness in the face of oppression, primarily generated in the face of the Japanese occupation in Korea, ironically. It's something that feeds a lot of Korean culture, that feeds a lot of Korean intergenerational trauma. Over the centuries, it's just Korea has been a great stepping stool for one country to, assault another country. And there's so much land to pillage and women to deflower on the way. So, that's something I sort of tried to engage with on the more, like I said, the more visceral dimension with Henry.
Interesting. Well, it was a great performance. We appreciate it, Wesley. Any other cast members want to talk about their prepreparation, or
maybe Al? You got some very good comments here about your performance.
He's the villain.
This bad guy. Not quite the villain in a way, but it's more gray than black, I think. Go ahead, Al.
I could not find much of anything about Mr. Head. And I guess that was disappointing at first, but kind of liberating on the other hand, because I could just then create what I thought of as a bureaucrat who was in over his head. And I read about the camp, and there were a lot of problems about the camp and running the camp, and unrest about I think the population was about 17,000.
Yes, it was at one point. Yeah.
And all kinds of trouble that a bureaucrat like I imagined this character would be in over his head pretty deep.
Yep.
So a person like that holds on to, the formalities and the rules and the regulations. And the one thing I did read somewhere was one little reference that said that he was known to have been sympathetic to the internees. One of the directors who was sympathetic. So I tried to, as much as I could not understand why this artist would want to come and volunteer, that seemed like a crazy thing to me as character to be here. I could connect with that. At least there's a humanity in there.
We love that Al created his office to look like it would be in the internment camp.
And the
From
costume,
the first
the suspenders
rehearsal,
and everything.
he created that little office. I don't know what he did. Maybe it is your office. I'm not sure. But he created it and it looked perfect for us. So we really,
That's not Al. That's Edward Albee.
that's Edward Albee. We think he looks very much like Edward Albee.
I didn't see it.
He's still alive. He hasn't left the
Sam
building.
and Sehee, did you want to add anything? Certainly, Collier is a real character too.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I kind of dug in a little bit. And actually, Chris been researching Isamu and all these other people and shot me a couple of nice articles that he found talking about Collier, who was apparently a very, very accomplished bureaucrat.
Looked like a movie star too. He looked like a movie star.
And writer as well. He wrote books.
Always good. Always like out of GQ.
Well, that was Head. Yeah, that was Head.
That was Wade Head. Yeah.
Head looked good. Collier actually looked like alfalfa, with the slick down hair. I saw that. I thought, well, I can't do that. But he was a flaming idealist, I think, from the very beginning, and had to have been very persuasive and to get legislation passed to kind of secure a little more rights and independence and authority for a lot of the Indian populations out there. And this is at a time in the first part of the century when the lands they had were just sort of being nibbled away in little pieces, taken away and given off to somebody. And then he was just appalled by this stuff. So he was really a really committed warrior for this. And I figure had to have a lot of bureaucratic skills in order to make that stuff happen. Had to be persuasive and had to be fairly, eloquent and get along with all these folks. Later on in his life, he ran into a lot more trouble apparently, and a lot of his initiatives just fell flat, and he came in for an awful lot of criticism and dead ends later on. But he was certainly on the right path right from the beginning.
Wow.
Didn't help Isamu too much, though, unfortunately, in his situation.
No.
But he.
No.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
That's right. Sehee.
Yeah. Any thoughts on your character?
The only female member of our cast.
Yes. Well, I didn't do like Wesley or Itaro and Henry's character or the actor. I didn't do as much research or extensive research as all the other actors, but I brought my familial experience with an older brother and my experience with my scenes with Isamu. How would a younger sibling, the only family in one's life, feel if they were sent to a concentration camp? So I felt as if that was something that I had to dig into, how I would feel personally if the only member in my family in the world was sent off to a prison. So that's how I did my research. It's more personal than it is.
Well, it came through in the performance tremendously so. Nice job.
Yeah. Great. I think that's it for the questions. I did want to certainly end with a comment from one of the attendees saying thank you for such a moving work of art and love. And certainly Stephen and Mark and the wonderful cast. Thank you so much, and we just got another bravo. So thanks again, and to the attendees, certainly thank you for attending.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.